Hello, my name is Matthew Pfeiffer. Thank you for joining Toxic to Triumph. I have a very special guest with me here today. I have an attorney who specializes in narcissism, and not only is she an attorney, she's also a therapist, and so she knows about this clinically as well. I have Natalie Guadalupe. Natalie, thank you for joining the show. Thank you for coming on Toxic to Triumph. If you want to take it over and just introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, thanks for having me. I listen to your show a lot, so I'm really excited to be on your show. This is one of my favorite podcasts. As you stated, I am an attorney and I am also a licensed therapist. And I focus my practice on narcissists and how people can build a case against a narcissist, whether it's a divorce case, a child custody case, or another type of case. But my practice focuses on helping my clients to build their case against a narcissist.
Well, perfect. And tell me, how does one go from being a therapist to an attorney or vice versa? Which one did you actually start out with?
Yeah, so I started off as a therapist and I had a lot of clients that were in a co-occurring disorders program. So they had a drug problem and then they had a mental health issue, depression, schizophrenia, anxiety, any of those. And they is as part of their drug court process had to go to court and show updates in their therapy. And since I was their therapist, I would go with them and I testify about their progress in therapy. And through doing that, I really got interested in the law and wanting to help and advocate for people in court. And so after practicing for about 5 or so years, I went to law school and now I'm working with clients who have issues with narcissists.
And how does that work? Do they come to you? Do you go to them? Like how does, I can just hear people, because you practice here in Texas, you're in Dallas here with me, just for all the listeners to know. But how does one find a lawyer, an attorney who specializes in narcissism?
So I did some searching around before I really started focusing on that, and I really didn't find any. So I really don't know how others would find somebody like that. There aren't a lot of attorneys who are also therapists. I would say what makes my approach and me different is that I don't talk to you just like I would say a normal attorney. I'm not, in my opinion, boring.
Right.
I try to make the consultations almost like a therapy session. We talk about what's going on emotionally, and we talk about whatever the legal goals are. So if it's a child custody matter and the ex is a narcissist who was very controlling over the finances and the the children and was abusive verbally or physically, we talk about that in a therapeutic way, and then we from that go on and build your strategy. So if the strategy is about visitation and how much time you want with the child versus your ex, or if you want to be the primary conservator, we talk about what that means, what rights are involved with that. If you need child support, we talk about all that. Spousal maintenance, if you are married, in Texas, it's not called alimony. So if spousal maintenance is something that's needed after the divorce ends, we talk about that. But we talk about it in a way that is therapeutic and not just about the law and what the law will allow you to do.
I can hear people screaming on the other end because because I help people build a strategy as well. One of the biggest hurdles that a lot of people try to overcome is the fact that if I go for alimony, if I go for palimony for anything, child custody, child support, then the narcissist is going to retaliate. How do you handle that from a legal perspective?
I'd say the narcissist will try to retaliate over anything. But from a legal perspective, there are measures that can be taken in child support. If they are retaliating by not paying child support, the Texas Child Support Office will allow, well, they do two things. One, they will put you on the website. They will put the non-payer on the website and have an issue. You can get an arrest warrant for civil arrest, but they will have a picture of that person on their website for everyone to see, which is really embarrassing for non-payment of child support. So if the narcissist retaliates by not paying child support, that's something that can be done. If the narcissist retaliates by not paying spousal maintenance, you can file an enforcement action to enforce whatever was in the order, which is where you would have the spousal maintenance laid out. So there are legal steps you can take to combat that retaliation if and when it happens. But I also want to caution everyone that the court system isn't really about remedying these toxic relationships. They can help. You can put legal safeguards and guardrails on your life, but the court system won't remedy all of what's happening. So the narcissist will probably try to find ways around that and continue to torment your life. So I want to put that as a disclaimer, but you can use an attorney and you can use the legal process to help you combat whatever the narcissist is doing.
Tell us more about this remedying. What do you mean by court does not remedy relationships like this? I deal with this quite often as well, because I'm assuming that it has a lot to do with actually building your case against the narcissist as well.
Yes. So what I mean by the court will not remedy the relationship is that a lot of people, friends and clients, have come to me and said, I just want my day in court. I just want to be heard. If the judge hears my case, then everything will work out for me. And the courts really aren't built for that, and they're not set up for that. And even so, I'll use divorce as an example. I have clients who have said, like, I just need to get a divorce from this person, and then my life will move on. My life will change. And yes, your life will move on and it will change, but going to court isn't going to make these things resolve on their own. You have to use other therapeutic ways to heal and transform the divorce into healing. So that's, to me, going to therapy, having a support group, using boundaries, going no contact or low contact, using, if you have children together, having a parallel parenting style rather than a not normal, but what you can have in an amicable divorce, co-parenting style, which is what I would say you have normally when you're married. So that's what I mean by normal. But when you're divorced from a narcissist, the parallel parenting style works better. So going to court is not going to remedy your toxic relationship. It's the work that is done after your therapy, your support group, and then continuing on with the new boundaries that we learn after we learn about these relationships.
And tell us more about this actually building the case. Tell us more about building this case towards like let's say, because most people in these type of situations and are listening to this need to build a parallel parenting plan. Mm-hmm. Right? They, obviously, if you're dealing with a narcissist, they counterparent. They don't co-parent at all. What does that look like in terms of building the case, in terms of getting the evidence together? How does one make your life as an attorney easier?
So that is a great question. One thing that can be done is to keep a behavior journal. This journal should be dedicated to describing interactions and things that have happened with the narcissist. You can do this and you're kind of building this like a business record, which is what can be used in the rules of evidence to get something in that would normally be excluded because it's hearsay or some other objection that could come up. So keep a behavior journal. Dedicate this to describing factual things that have happened with the narcissist, things they've said, things they've done. If they have gone in and changed your passwords and now you're locked out of your bank accounts, write that down. If you go to the bank and you ask them to help you to get your money out and you've been, removed from the account or something, take a record of that, take a picture of that. If you can have someone at the bank sign something to say that they saw it, do that. So you prepare by building a case of all the factual things that have happened. And some of this can be used if you have children together, in your parenting plan, your parallel parenting plan. So if you're writing down that they have harassed you or they do these negative things at certain places in your parallel parenting plan, you can have very specific things like pick up and drop off only at this place, at this time, And you can be very specific instead of like, I've had a client say like that the person changed the drop off from the person's front door to the external gate of the complex, which was really hard to get to. And that's where he was trying to drop off the child. And that wasn't what was in the order. So being very specific about pickup and drop off, when child support payments are made, if it's not through the Attorney General's office, like when and where they are done, in what method, if it's a check, if it's a credit card, like be very, very detailed. Also be very detailed about how you're going to communicate. So if you're going to communicate over an app like Talking Parents, or I can't think of the other one that I use.
Our Family Wizard is one I usually advocate for.
Yeah, that one. So if you're going to communicate with them, be very specific. We are only going to communicate over these apps. We are only going to communicate in writing, no phone calls at all. But then, the narcissist will try to use these things against you. So they may like block your number while your child's at their house, and then you can't get in contact with them. So that's something else we would build out in the parenting plan, that while my daughter's name is Naomi, while Naomi is at daddy's house, mommy can call from these hours, or the phone is on for this time for FaceTime, and these people are allowed to be in the room, these people are not allowed to be in the room. I've had cases where there was somebody who was not a good influence on the child, so that person, at least on FaceTime, was not allowed to be on the phone. So different things like that. You think about all of the possibilities of where things can go wrong, things that have gone wrong in the past, and you write it all out in your parenting plan. And with the help of your attorney, or if you are advocating for yourself, you can bring this before the court. And most of the time, if there is an agreement on both sides about what goes in these plans, the court will just sign off on it. So that's something a lot of people aren't aware of. If you build your parenting plan and the court agrees to it, then that's what gets put in place. So you don't have to go in there worrying about what the outcome is going to be. What's the judge going to decide? I mean, you can worry about that, but you can have already put in place what you want. And most likely, if it's agreed, then it'll be signed into the order. If it's not an agreed process, then it's not a smooth divorce or a smooth custody case. Then, you may have a trial, and that part gets a little bit more bumpy. But if you can get an agreed order, then you can build all of these things into your parallel parenting plan.
Tell us more about this actual agreement. Most people I work with, the narcissist never, ever agrees. They never want to, I say all the time that they're not there looking for any sort of compromise whatsoever. They're there trying to create chaos, trying to, like you said, trying to have their day in court. They are there trying to win, and there always has to be a winner. There always has to be a loser. One is going to win, and if they're the one that's losing, then they automatically turn themselves into a victim. I haven't seen not very many times where mediation oftentimes isn't very helpful. Tell us more about this. How are you able to get an agreement, if at all? And is that common with narcissists for you to come to an agreement? And if not, what do you do in the situation where there just is no compromise, there's no meeting in the middle?
Yeah, so I would say it's not common for narcissists to agree to things. And meeting in the middle, so this feels a little like I'm being a little shady, but I'm not. So when you're working with a person who's been a survivor of a narcissist abuse, you have to coach them on how to go to mediation and how to interact with if you're in any other alternative dispute resolution, you coach them on how to present what they want and what they really don't want and what they're willing to compromise on, so that it's done through a coaching process to get that person to, be a better negotiator for what they want. So
I don't think that's shady at all. I do the exact same thing. Is I coach people, and I tell people how to present. It's not shady. Like, we're talking about survival. I mean, you're talking about literally possibly the rest of your life. And if you're not careful, you will end up with something, because the narcissist is looking to continue enmeshment. They want to continue the control after the divorce. If you're not careful, if you don't know what to look for, you can have a bigger headache than what you actually had when you were actually married to the narcissist.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I'm glad that you agree on that one. So go in with a strategy so that you're not just giving away everything. Go in with a strategy. Mediation, you're supposed to compromise and have an open mind. But remember, with the narcissist, they're not going in with that same good, benevolent intent. So you have to have a strategy when you go into that situation. And the mediator is supposed to help you guys get somewhere towards the middle. So by not laying all your cards on the table, you can get to somewhere that it's, a medium middle ground for you without the narcissist really knowing all that you want it. They may know, but you have to have a strategy when you go into that. As far as the narcissist not getting to an agreed order, yes, that can happen. When you go to court, we'll have our order already drafted, and the court may scratch out some things and add some things, change some things. So it's not that you're going to go in there, it's going to be like a slam dunk. But there are ways to get closer to what you would want to have in your order than if you had the narcissist draw it up themselves, or if the narcissist had an attorney and you did not have an attorney.
Legally, how do you advise people to handle post-discard abuse? After the divorce is all set, we're done, and it's common for a narcissist to still not comply with the order. They start playing all these games. They're not dropping the kids off on time. If at all, sometimes they, especially around Christmas time, around the holidays, they may not return them, for days. And I talked to another attorney where they described it as they're flirting with the lines, right? Where it's almost like you could take this to court, but do you really want to spend thousands upon thousands of dollars for an attorney when the person is returning them like several hours late? It's an inconvenience, but is it worth the money to continue to fight some of these battles? Or like some of the vicious text messages, when, and I forgot to tell you that you are allowed to swear on here, but those, those messages, those text messages that are, you're probably out there fucking somebody else and this and that. And, where they're just completely abusive, but peppering in some elements of co-parenting to where you feel like it's necessary to respond. Legally, how do you handle these type of situations? What are the proper steps?
That's a very good question. So legally with that, you can file with the harassment. You can file a harassment action. It's a class A or B misdemeanor, depending on certain factors. You can also file an enforcement action. You can file a police report if there's things that are criminal happening. All those things can be done. The only thing the caveat is that it may not stop them. It may not solve them. And it will be expensive if you have to keep going back to court to file these things. Those are expensive for you. And yes, the narcissist probably is doing this on purpose to cause you financial harm. Sometimes the court will order attorney's fees. So that's something we can always hope for. I've had it happen on a number of cases, and it's been really great for our clients to have their attorney's fees ordered. But that doesn't mean you automatically get the money. So you may have to enforce this ruling by the judge that you are awarded attorney's fees. So there's always like another hurdle to go through.
Where is that line drawn? Where is it that, I work with a lot of people that when should you take it to court? At what level is it like, okay, this is pretty serious? Or when is it like we just need to set and we need to enforce some boundaries outside of court?
Well, a narcissist has their public image to maintain. So I would say going to court is something that is threatening to a narcissist. They may bring you to court, but they don't want their public image to be tarnished. So I would say bring it to court, one, when there is a need for safety and you've had the police reports and you've just got to get out. I think that you need to go to court because you need a legally enforceable order for when they violate it and they send you these harassing text messages or they're dropping the kids off 3 hours late. You have something to go back on. With this also requires a lot of documentation. So unfortunately, the abuse survivor has a lot of additional work they have to do in addition to dealing with this other person. So lots of documentation of everything that's happened, the date, the time, if anyone else was there, really document all of this stuff.
What would you say is the most like difficult type of cases that you deal with when dealing with a narcissist?
I can't pinpoint one specific type, but I would say it just really complicates the legal issue, because people get divorced all the time. People break up all the time and have child custody arrangements, and that happens, and that legal separation is enough of a hardship for both parties most of the time. But when you have a narcissist and they're playing mind games and they have all these extra elements that are interfering with the legal process, it becomes more difficult for the person that's usually my client, and then it makes the case a little bit more difficult.
I would, for me, when I'm strategizing with someone, I would say the most difficult case is when the narcissist is financially well off and is able to engage in legal abuse. And they can afford a team of attorneys, let alone like a high-powered attorney. And I would say that's probably the most difficult situation that I deal with in my one-on-one sessions. How would you say from a legal perspective does one handle a situation like that where they can just literally drown you in court if and when they need to, and they do it at every opportunity that they have? Because 90% of the time I advocate for court and I advocate to hire a lawyer. I advocate for divorces, but you do have some narcissists that are highly successful, in particular some malignant narcissists who will given that opportunity, and they will use it as a form of post-discard abuse and will completely drown you and at least try to completely wipe you out. Now, what does that look like on your end? What would you tell someone, and how does it feel and I'm sure you can hold your weight with anyone, right? However, when they have someone that is just, a legal master on the other side in terms of an attorney or a team of people, that sort of thing.
So when we need reinforcements, then we do engage reinforcements to help us with cases. If they are a really difficult case that has a lot of discovery requests and other things that can be bullyish from the attorney or from the client themselves, then we stack more resources against that case and work on the case. I would advise clients to, if it's a matter of finances, think about how much the case is worth to you. Is it worth this emotional turmoil that you're going to go through with having this thing drag on with this post-discard abuse, which is also the narcissist's way of like staying in your life? So do you want to like keep doing this, or are there things that we can almost just ignore and just move away from? When you have children together, that part's difficult. So I don't want to say that it's easy in any circumstance, but when you have children together, that part is more difficult. But I would say what things are winning for you versus what's winning to the narcissist. If it's winning to you to have peace of mind, to be able to move on with some things, then I would say that that's winning.
What are some common mistakes that your clients make when building this case and presenting to you, and maybe on the stand, or just some overall common mistakes that people can kind of be aware of going into a situation?
I would say showing their hand to the narcissist. So,
that's a big one. I agree 100%.
Yeah, like the narcissist knows how to manipulate, and then you show your hand, and then what do you have?
Yeah, and so on my end, outside of court, the narcissist oftentimes will say things like, "We don't need attorneys. Let's try to work this out between the two of us." And then what happens is that you tip your hand. And what happens is that the narcissists they like to attack vulnerability. And so quite often, if they know that you're going for, if there's something specific that you want, that's what they're going to hold on to the most in court. And that's what they will fight for the most. I always use an example of someone that I was dealing with that that wanted to, I think I talked to you about this at one point in time, that had a therapeutic dog. And she was like, he can have anything he wants. And they didn't have kids between each other. He can have the house, he can have the assets, all of it, but I absolutely 100% need my dog, and try to negotiate that outside of court. And of course, the narcissist gets into court and says, I would be so lonely without my dog. She can have anything she wants. She can have the house, she can have the assets, and fought viciously over that dog. And so I agree 100% about not tipping your hand.
And that means don't tell your friends, don't tell anyone who could possibly get this back to the narcissist.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And in terms of someone who literally cannot afford court, cannot afford an attorney, like let's say that the narcissist is engaged in a lot of financial abuse throughout, or let's say that it was a stay-at-home mom, stay-at-home dad, or because of COVID, someone's lost their job, they've been laid off, and then the narcissist has completely wiped out the bank account. How do they find representation? Is there a way to find representation? What does that look like?
Yeah, so there is Legal Aid of Northwest Texas, which provides free or low-cost legal services. You can also go online to Texas Law Help. There are free resources that can help you to prepare a case. You can also go to the law library in the county where you live at the courthouse, and they have free legal resources within the library. The people who work there can't help you on that stuff, but they can direct you to where the books are. And you can find a lot of information online as well through different Google searches. I've actually found TikTok to be pretty resourceful for different pieces of legal information from other attorneys. So I would say, follow some attorneys that provide good content, and do your own reading. You can also get some limited scope representation. So maybe paying a full retainer is not within your budget, but if you work with an attorney who would do a limited scope representation, they can help you on drafting documents and maybe preparing some responses to discovery or helping you to request discovery, but not representing you in full. So there are some options that can help you to get over the financial hurdle.
What do you say to people who, I can hear some people listening to this, and they're hearing all of this and they're starting to realize, you know what, my current attorney sucks. They have no clue about narcissism. And me personally, I don't think that, I think that it's a huge advantage if your attorney does know about narcissism. But because like you said, most attorneys don't know about it, but they do know it from like a high conflict divorce type of situation. But there are some attorneys that are just so aloof when it comes to this stuff. And when it comes to high conflict, and they're looking to avoid trial at all costs, they're not really advocating for the person. What do you tell people who are not being represented very well? How do they handle a situation where they currently have an attorney that just isn't doing that great of a job after hearing something like this and knowing what they should be doing?
Yeah, so I suggest you talk with your attorney about what you want out of your case, the type of representation you want, and you, as they interview you in your consultation, you are interviewing them to see if this is the attorney for you. Does this person speak to you in a way that makes sense? Sometimes attorneys speak in legalese, and like even myself as an attorney, I'm like, what does that mean? What are they saying? So find someone who can speak like a normal person, and find someone who cares about the emotional things that are happening. Those are my two suggestions. The law and attorneys and law school doesn't really train you in personality disorders or, these types of things. They can train you in doing a high conflict divorce, but in working with you as a survivor of a narcissistic relationship, that's not part of most attorneys' training. So I'm not bad-mouthing any attorney who doesn't do that because it's not part of their core training. But when you find your attorney, find someone who you feel comfortable with and who can speak to you in a way that is commonplace language to where you and the attorney can be on the same page.
You mean to tell me that in law school they don't talk about empathy at all?
It's not the way they taught me in grad school for being a therapist. So no.
Natalie, thank you very much for joining Toxic to Triumph. I really, really appreciate it. For those of you who are looking for more information on her, she practices in Texas. Is it Texas only, or are you licensed in other states as well?
I'm licensed in Maryland, but I only practice in Texas right now. And we practice all over the state. With COVID and a lot of the courts being on Zoom, we can practice across the state. So it's mostly the Dallas area, Denton and Plano and Frisco, but we do practice across the state.
So for those of you who are listening in Houston, I know I have a lot of Houston listeners. She sounds like she would be able to represent you, but you can find her at ritadixonlaw.com. She's also at education and family law. At education and family law on TikTok and Instagram. Is there anywhere else that they can find you?
I'm still working on my social media, so okay. Right now, those are the best two places.
Okay, perfect. Well, Natalie, once again, thank you very much. Do you have any closing statements that for anyone?
Closing statements. I should be prepared with one since I'm an attorney, but really, just when you are working on your case or you're working with your attorney on your case, make sure you have great documentation. Express to your attorney what things have been difficult in the past so that that can be built into your parallel parenting plan if you have children with the narcissist, and seek therapy to resolve some of the other hurts in the wounds, because the legal system, while it can help with some of the legal structures and barriers, it won't solve your issue. So seek therapeutic help.
I agree. Natalie, thanks again, and we will talk soon.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.